Maya Daniels had been on her feet for 11 hours. The diner was quiet now. Most of the customers had cleared out around 9, leaving behind sticky menus and half-eaten pie. Maya untied her apron, dropped into the booth nearest the kitchen, and pulled out her phone. Her coworker Deb was already texting her from the parking lot. "You see that guy who sat at table 6 for like 4 hours today, with all the papers?" Maya smiled and typed back quickly, her thumbs moving fast and loose, the way they did when she was tired, and her filter was mostly gone. "If you're really who everyone thinks you are, somebody close to you is stealing a fortune." She meant it as a joke. They'd been laughing about the man all shift, nervous energy, expensive watch, eyes that kept darting to the door. Deb had whispered that he looked like someone running from money trouble. Maya had said he looked like someone in money trouble. That text was supposed to be a dramatic punchline to the whole conversation. She hit send. Then her phone buzzed. Deb's response came through, but it was a reply to an earlier message, a different thread entirely. Maya's stomach dropped. She opened her messages and stared at what she'd done. The text hadn't gone to Deb. It had gone to a number she didn't recognize, a number that had texted her once, 8 weeks ago, asking if this was Sunrise Diner, and then immediately saying never mind when she confirmed it was. She'd forgotten to delete the thread, and her tired thumbs had opened the wrong contact when she started typing. She stared at the screen for a full 10 seconds. If you're really who everyone thinks you are, somebody close to you is stealing a fortune. "Oh no," she whispered. She typed immediately. "Sorry, wrong number. Please ignore that." The message showed delivered, then read, then nothing. No response. Maya sat there for another minute, told herself it was fine, that it was just some random wrong number, and drove home through the dark Tennessee backroads with the radio turned up loud enough to stop her from thinking. She lived in a small house on the outskirts of Nashville, the kind of place with a porch that needed painting and a yard that needed mowing and a front door that stuck in the summer humidity. She'd rented it for 3 years. It wasn't much, but it was hers, and after a shift like that one, it looked like the most beautiful thing in the world. She was heating up leftovers when she saw the headlights. Not 1 pair, 3, maybe 4. They turned down her road slowly, which was strange because people didn't turn down her road unless they lived on it, and none of her neighbors drove anything that cast headlights that wide or that bright. Maya set down her fork. The vehicles pulled up outside her house one after another. Black SUVs, tinted windows, clean and expensive in a way that had no business being on a road like hers. Her heart kicked hard against her ribs. She stood at the window for a moment, completely frozen, running through every reasonable explanation she could think of and coming up empty. Then the back door of the second SUV opened. A man stepped out. He was tall, mid-30s, dressed in a dark jacket over a simple shirt. No tie. He didn't look rushed. He didn't look angry. He walked up toward her porch like he had all the time in the world and had simply decided to spend some of it here. Maya grabbed her phone and moved toward the door before she'd fully made the decision to open it. She stood behind the screen door, her heart still racing. The man stopped a few feet from her steps. Up close, he had sharp eyes that didn't miss anything, and a face that was hard to read. Not cold exactly, just controlled. He looked at her for a moment. "Why did you send that message?" His voice was calm, conversational almost, like he was asking about the weather. Maya opened her mouth and closed it again. Her brain was catching up slowly. She thought about lying. She thought about closing the door. She thought about several other things that all seemed equally bad. "It was a mistake," she finally said. "I sent it to the wrong number. I was texting my coworker and I hit the wrong contact." He studied her. "What were you joking about?" "A customer from earlier today. He sat at the diner for hours with spreadsheets all over the table. We thought he looked stressed. It was a dumb joke. I didn't mean anything by it." Something shifted in his expression. Not much, just enough. What did this customer look like? Maya blinked. Of all the things she'd expected him to say, that wasn't it. "Why?" "Because," he said, steady as anything, "what you wrote in that message is something I've been trying to figure out for 4 months." She stared at him. He didn't flinch. He wasn't threatening her. He wasn't performing. He was just standing there in the dark outside her porch, like a man who had run out of patience for anything except the truth. "My name is Ethan Brooks," he said, "and I think you might have accidentally walked into the middle of something you don't know anything about yet." Maya looked past him at the black SUVs idling quietly on her road. She looked back at him. "You'd better come in," she said. Maya made coffee because she didn't know what else to do with her hands. Ethan sat at her kitchen table like he'd been invited, jacket still on, phone face down in front of him. 2 of his men stayed outside. She could see the glow of their cigarettes through the window. The 3rd had come inside and stood near the front door without saying a word or being asked to. She set a mug in front of Ethan and kept one for herself. "So," she said, dropping into the chair across from him, "you're going to tell me who you are, or am I supposed to just guess?" "You already know who I am." "I know your name. That's not the same thing." He wrapped both hands around the mug and looked at her. "I run several businesses across Tennessee, Illinois, and New York. Logistics, real estate, a few others. I employ a lot of people." He paused. "Some of what I do is complicated." Maya nodded slowly. "Complicated?" "Yes." "And the black SUVs outside my house at 10:30 on a Friday are part of the complicated part?" "They're a precaution." "For who? You or me?" He almost smiled. Almost. "Right now, probably both." She wrapped her hands around her own mug and decided to stop dancing around it. "Someone is stealing from you. That's what my text said. Was I right?" Ethan was quiet for a moment. "Over the past several months, money has been moving in ways it shouldn't. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. My financial team flagged inconsistencies, but nothing that pointed clearly at anyone. I've been running an internal review and getting nowhere." He looked at her directly. "Your text used the word fortune. That was specific enough to make me pay attention." "It was a figure of speech." "I understand that, but it was also accurate." He set the mug down. "You mentioned a customer. Tell me about him." Maya thought back. The lunch rush had been brutal that day, maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago. Table 6 had been taken up most of the afternoon by a single man who kept ordering coffee and nothing else until she finally convinced him to try the pie. He'd barely touched it. "He was maybe 40, she said. Medium height, brown hair going gray at the sides. He wore a button-down shirt, no tie, nice shoes, the kind of shoes that cost money but aren't flashy about it." She paused. "He had a laptop open, but he kept printing things. We have a little business printer near the back. Customers can use it for $1 a page. He used it 4 times. Ethan's expression sharpened, almost imperceptibly. "He had spreadsheets spread across the whole table," Maya continued, "color-coded. He kept going back and forth between the printed pages and something on his laptop screen, circling things, writing in the margins.
I noticed because I had to keep reaching around all of it to refill his coffee."
"Did he say anything to you?"
She thought about it. "Not much at first, but around 3 in the afternoon the place emptied out and he relaxed a little, started talking." She turned the mug in her hands. "He asked how long I'd worked there. I told him 3 years. He said he'd been at his job for 9 and wasn't sure he recognized it anymore. Ethan went very still. He said something else, Maya added. He said sometimes the people closest to you are the ones you should have been watching. She'd thought it was odd at the time, the kind of thing someone says when they're carrying something heavy and have nobody to say it to. Then he paid his bill and left. Did he leave anything behind? A notebook. She said it before she'd thought it through. Small black cover, spiral-bound. He left it wedged between the seat and the wall. I found it when I was wiping down the booth. Ethan leaned forward slightly. What did you do with it? I turned it into the lost and found. She hesitated. Then, the next day, I went back and looked at it. Most of it was just numbers and abbreviations I didn't understand, but there was a name on the inside cover. Tyler Reed. The silence that followed was different from the ones before it. Ethan sat back in his chair. His jaw tightened once, and then he controlled it. You're sure that was the name? I'm sure. I remember thinking it sounded like someone from a law show. She watched him carefully. You know him. Tyler Reed was an accountant for one of my companies. Ethan's voice was even, but there was something running underneath it. He stopped showing up to work 7 weeks ago. We assumed he'd quit. He left no notice, no forwarding address. His apartment was cleared out. He didn't quit, Maya said slowly. No, Ethan agreed. It looks like he didn't. She thought about the man at table 6, the careful way he'd looked at the door every few minutes, the spreadsheets he wouldn't let anyone else touch, the way he'd said, sometimes the people closest to you are the ones you should have been watching. He was scared, she said. Yes. Of someone specific. Ethan nodded once. Which is why I need you to tell me everything else you remember. Places he mentioned, things he said, anything written on those pages you saw before you handed that notebook in. He looked at her steadily. You have a good memory, Maya. Occupational habit, you remember orders, you remember people. Then help me find him. She should have said no. She had a shift at 7 in the morning, a broken porch railing, and absolutely no business getting involved in whatever this was. She looked at Ethan Brooks sitting in her kitchen at 11 o'clock at night, and she said, Where do we start? They left Nashville at 6 in the morning. Maya had barely slept. She'd spent the night going through every detail she could pull from that afternoon with Tyler Reed, writing things down in the Notes app on her phone so she wouldn't lose them by morning. A gas station he'd mentioned, a storage place off the highway, the name of a street that had come up when he was on a call she hadn't meant to overhear. Ethan had sent one of his men to the diner's lost and found the night before. The notebook was still there. Whatever Tyler had written in it was now in the hands of Ethan's team, being cross-referenced against financial records Maya couldn't begin to understand. She climbed into the black SUV at 5:55 with a travel mug and a bag she'd packed in 20 minutes. Ethan was already inside, reading something on a tablet. You actually came, he said without looking up. I said I would. He glanced at her then. A lot of people say things. I'm not a lot of people. He went back to the tablet. Maya looked out the window as Nashville disappeared behind them and the highway opened up into pale morning sky. The drive to Chattanooga took just under 2 hours. For the first 40 minutes, neither of them said much. Maya drank her coffee and watched the landscape shift. Ethan worked through whatever was on his tablet, occasionally typing short responses to messages that kept coming in. Then his phone rang, and he stepped out of the conversation entirely, speaking in low, clipped sentences about something involving a warehouse inventory discrepancy. Maya looked out the window and didn't listen. When he hung up, she said, How long has this been going on? The money disappearing. He considered whether to answer. The first irregularity showed up 14 months ago, small enough to look like an accounting error. Then it kept happening. Different accounts, different amounts, but the same pattern underneath. And no one inside your organization caught it? They caught the numbers. Nobody could explain them. His voice was flat. When you run multiple companies, money moves constantly. It's easy to bury something if you know where to look. Whoever is doing this knows your business well. Very well, he said. Maya turned that over in her mind. So it's someone close. He didn't answer, which was answer enough. Chattanooga came into view around 8:15. Their first stop was a credit card record Tyler had used at a gas station on the south side of the city, 3 days before he disappeared. Ethan's team had pulled the surrounding business records too. Tyler had been moving around the area for at least 2 days before that final transaction went dark. They drove through the industrial district, slowly, Maya watching out the window, matching what she saw to what she remembered Tyler saying that afternoon at the diner. "He mentioned a road with a paint supply warehouse on it," she said. "He said it like he was thinking out loud. Something about how nobody looks at storage near industrial supply places because everyone assumes the smell keeps people away." The driver glanced in the mirror. Ethan leaned forward slightly. "That's specific," Ethan said. He was specific. He just didn't realize he was saying it out loud. She pointed left at the next junction. "Try that way." They found the road 6 minutes later. While Ethan's team worked the area, he and Maya walked along the edge of a chain-link lot that backed onto a long row of storage and supply units. The morning was warming up fast, the way Tennessee mornings do in late spring, that particular combination of sun and humidity that makes everything feel slightly urgent. "Can I ask you something?" Maya said. "You're going to anyway." She smiled at that. "Why did you come yourself? To my house last night? You could have sent someone." He was quiet for a moment. "I've been sending people for 14 months. It hasn't worked." He stopped at the corner of the fence and looked out at the industrial stretch ahead of them. "Sometimes you have to go yourself. Or maybe you just don't trust anyone to do it right." He looked at her sideways. "I'm not saying that's a bad thing," Maya added. "I'm just saying that's what it looks like from where I'm standing." He was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet this time, less closed off and more like he was actually sitting with what she'd said. "I built everything I have by being careful," he said finally, "and someone still got through." He looked back at the storage units. "That's a particular kind of uncomfortable." "Yeah," Maya said. "I imagine it is." They stood there for a moment, not talking. A truck rumbled past on the road behind them. Somewhere nearby, a radio played something country and upbeat that felt completely wrong for the morning. "You're not what I expected," Ethan said. "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Someone easier to read." Maya laughed quietly. "Sorry to disappoint." "I didn't say it was a disappointment." She looked at him. He was already looking away, back toward where his team was moving between the units, checking numbers, comparing records. But there was something different in the set of his shoulders, less like a man running a search and more like a man who had exhaled for the first time in a while. Maya filed that away the same way she filed everything else. One of Ethan's men appeared at the far end of the row, waving them over. They'd found something. The unit was registered under the name David Carl. Ethan's man had found it by cross-referencing the rental records from 3 facilities along the road with a list of names Tyler Reed had used across various low-level accounts over the years. David Carl was one of them. A ghost name, the kind you create when you need to exist somewhere without actually being there. The lock had already been handled by the time Ethan and Maya reached the unit. The rolling door went up with a clatter, and the smell of old paper and dust came out first, the way it always does when a small, enclosed space has been sealed for weeks. Maya stayed back a step while Ethan went in. It wasn't large, maybe 10 feet deep, 12 wide. Metal shelving ran along both walls, and on those shelves sat nearly 24 labeled binders, stacked with the kind of careful precision that suggested Tyler Reed had spent a lot of time organizing this place. Nothing was thrown in. Nothing was out of order. Every binder had a date range on the spine, written in small, neat handwriting. Ethan pulled one from the middle shelf and opened it. Maya watched his face. He read for less than a minute and then set the binder down on a folding table near the door and pulled out his phone. He made a call, said 4 words, "Send the document team," and hung up. "What is it?" she asked. "Financial records, internal transfer logs." He opened another binder. "These are from inside my companies. Accounts I recognize, transactions I never authorized." He turned a few pages slowly. Tyler didn't just notice something was wrong. He built a case. He was going to report it? Or use it? I don't know yet. He set that one down too. But he collected this over months, maybe longer. He rented this unit, organized everything, and then disappeared before he did anything with it. Maya stepped inside and looked at the shelves more carefully. Every binder was dated. The earliest went back almost 2 years. The most recent was labeled with a date range ending just 3 weeks before Tyler stopped showing up to work. "He knew he was running out of time," she said. Ethan looked at her. "Look at the spacing," she said, pointing at the spines. "The early ones cover 6 months at a time. The last 4 cover 2 weeks each. He started moving faster toward the end. Whatever he found most of it in that final stretch." Ethan looked back at the shelves. He pulled the last binder and opened it. His expression stayed controlled, but his jaw tightened once. "These transactions," he said slowly, "are routed through 3 separate holding companies, all of them legitimate on paper, all of them connected to my real estate division." He turned a page. "Someone has been using my own infrastructure to move the money. Whoever set this up understood how the whole system works from the inside." "Your inner circle," Maya said. He didn't respond immediately. He closed the binder and set it back carefully. "There are coded notes at the back of each one," Maya said. She'd been looking over his shoulder at the last 2 he'd opened. "The same abbreviations repeated. LPC shows up a lot in the final binder. You see it?" Ethan went back and opened the last binder to the notes section. He stood there looking at the page for a long moment. "You have a good eye," he said quietly. "I told you, occupational habit." He didn't say what LPC meant, but something about the way he closed that binder and handed it to his man without a word told Maya it meant something specific to him, something he wasn't ready to say out loud yet.
They waited outside while the document team worked through the unit systematically, photographing and cataloging everything. 2 hours passed. Maya sat on the hood of the SUV in the warming morning sun and worked through a sandwich one of the drivers had picked up from somewhere. Ethan stood a few feet away, making calls, reviewing whatever his team sent through on the tablet. He moved through it all with the kind of focus that made it clear this was what he looked like when something finally had traction after a long time going nowhere. At one point, he sat down on the hood beside her, not talking, just sitting. She offered him half her sandwich without thinking about it. He looked at it for a second, then took it. "Thank you," he said. "It's just a sandwich." "I meant for the notes, the abbreviations. My team would have caught it eventually, but it would have taken longer." "Yes." She brushed crumbs off her jeans. "Someone very organized put all of this together," she said. "Tyler was scared, but he was also methodical. He didn't just run, he documented everything first. That's someone who wanted the truth to survive, even if he didn't." Ethan was quiet for a moment. "When I find him, I want to understand why he didn't come to me directly." "Because he wasn't sure he could trust you," Maya said simply. Ethan turned to look at her. "He told me that day at the diner," she said. "Not in so many words, but that's what he meant." She held his gaze. "He didn't know if you were part of it." Something moved across Ethan's face. Not anger, more like the particular weight of realizing how far things had gone without him knowing. "I wasn't,"
he said. I know, Maya said. He looked at her carefully. How? She shrugged. You came to my door yourself, at night, alone enough to come inside. People who are hiding something don't do that. He held her gaze for a moment longer than necessary. Then his phone rang, and he slid off the hood and walked away to answer it. And Maya looked back out at the storage units and thought about the abbreviation LPC and wondered how long it would take Ethan to say it out loud. The flight to New York was 2 hours. Maya had never flown private before. She'd expected it to feel glamorous in the way movies made it look. Champagne, wide leather seats, someone bringing things on a tray. Instead, it felt quiet and businesslike, the way everything around Ethan felt. 2 of his men sat at the back, reviewing documents. Ethan sat across from her, with his tablet and a black coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. She looked out the small oval window at the clouds below and thought about how completely her life had changed direction in 72 hours. 3 days ago, she'd been complaining to Deb about the coffee supplier sending the wrong roast again. Now, she was on a private plane to Manhattan, chasing a paper trail that led somewhere neither of them had fully named yet. Have you ever been to New York? Ethan asked, without looking up. Once. School trip, 8th grade. We saw a Broadway show and ate pizza standing up on the sidewalk, and I thought it was the greatest place on earth. What do you think now? Ask me when we land. He almost smiled. She was starting to recognize it, that slight shift at the corner of his mouth that was as close as he usually got. The conference venue was a hotel in Midtown, the kind of place with a marble lobby and staff who moved so quietly it felt choreographed. The business conference Tyler had attended was 3 weeks in the past, but Ethan's people had arranged access to the venue's records in advance. They met with the event coordinator in a small office off the main lobby. She was efficient and cooperative in the way people tend to be when they've been told in advance who they're meeting with. She pulled the attendee logs, the room booking history, the catering orders, anything that might tell them what Tyler had been doing and who he'd been doing it with.
Tyler had attended 2 panel sessions on the first day and nothing after that. He wasn't here for the conference, Maya said, looking at the printout. Ethan nodded. He used it as cover, a reason to be in the building. They asked about security footage. Most of it had cycled and been overwritten on the hotel's standard 30-day rotation, but the coordinator remembered something. She'd flagged it at the time and then forgotten about it when nothing came of it. One of the restaurant staff mentioned a guest who kept using the same corner table in the lounge over 3 days, she said. Always with a different person, always requesting the same corner. We thought he might be a journalist doing interviews. Can we speak to that staff member? Ethan asked. The server's name was Marco. He was mid-20s, working a lunch shift when they found him, and he remembered Tyler the moment Ethan's man showed him a photo. Yeah, that guy, Marco said, leaning against the service bar with his arms crossed. He was here 3 days straight. Always the corner booth by the window, always sparkling water, never ordered food until the last day when he got the soup. Do you remember who he met with? Maya asked. Marco thought about it. Different people each time, mostly. Business types. But there was one guy who came back. Twice. He tapped the bar once. Big guy. Not fat, just built, you know? Salt and pepper hair. Expensive suit, but he wore it loose, like the kind of guy who used to be physical and still carries it. Ethan went very still beside her. He had a way of talking, Marco continued, where he leaned across the table and kept his voice low, not whispering, just contained, like he didn't want to share the air with anyone outside that booth. How did the 2 of them seem? Maya asked. Friendly? Tense? Marco considered. First meeting, friendly, like old colleagues catching up. Second meeting, he paused. The smaller guy, the one in your photo,
He looked like he was trying to hold himself together. He kept his hands flat on the table the whole time. The big guy did most of the talking. Maya glanced at Ethan. His face was completely controlled, the kind of controlled that takes practice. "Did you catch a name?" she asked Marco. "The big guy paid for both meetings on a corporate card. I remember because he gave me a generous tip and I looked at the name on the card." Marco thought for a second. Pierce. Logan Pierce. They were back in the marble lobby when Ethan stopped walking. Maya stopped beside him. He stood there for a moment, looking at nothing in particular, and she watched something move through him that he didn't let reach his face. His hand found his jacket pocket and stayed there. "Logan Pierce," she said quietly. "My operations manager," Ethan said. 12 years. "I know." He looked at her. "You figured it out before I said it." "LPC," she said. "Logan Pierce. The abbreviation from the storage unit. I didn't want to say it before you were ready." He exhaled slowly through his nose. "It's circumstantial. Logan meeting Tyler at a conference doesn't mean anything on its own." "No," Maya agreed. "But Tyler documenting those meetings alongside unauthorized transactions does. Logan has been with me since before any of this was worth anything." His voice was even. "He helped me build it." Maya didn't say anything. There was nothing to say that would help with that particular pain. The kind that comes from realizing someone had access to everything you trusted them with. "We need more," Ethan said finally. "I won't move on 12 years with what we have." "Then we find more," Maya said. He looked at her for a moment. Then he nodded once and started walking again, and she fell into step beside him, and neither of them said another word until they were back outside in the noise of Midtown. Boston in late May felt like the city was finally exhaling after a long winter. The waterfront was alive with that particular restless energy that comes when people have been cold for too long and suddenly aren't. Maya noticed it from the car window as they crossed into the city. Street vendors, cyclists, couples walking close, life happening in full view. She'd been away from the diner for 5 days now. Deb was covering her shifts without complaint, texting updates that were mostly just strings of emojis and one long voice note Maya had listened to twice just to hear something familiar. Ethan had a contact here, a former associate who had worked adjacent to Logan Pierce's division for several years before quietly stepping away from Ethan's organization. The man had requested a face-to-face, no phone calls, no emails. They met him at a waterfront restaurant that wasn't open for lunch yet. The chairs were still upside down on most of the tables when they arrived. The contact, a compact man in his 60s named Frank Della, was already there with a cup of coffee and the expression of someone who had spent years choosing his words carefully. "I wondered when this conversation would happen," Frank said when Ethan sat down. "What do you know?" Ethan asked. Frank wrapped both hands around his cup. "Enough to have stayed quiet about it until now, which I'm not proud of." He looked at the table. "About 2 years ago, I started noticing irregularities in the invoicing coming through Logan's side of operations, amounts that didn't match the contracts I'd seen. I raised it internally once and was told the discrepancy had been corrected." He paused. "It hadn't been. I looked again 3 months later, and the same pattern was there, just moved to a different account line." "Why didn't you come to me?" Ethan's voice stayed level. Frank was quiet for a moment. "Because Logan told me it was your arrangement, that you'd structured certain accounts that way for tax efficiency purposes." He looked up. "I believed him. He was your right hand. Why would I question it?" Ethan said nothing. "I left 8 months later for unrelated reasons," Frank continued, "but it stayed with me." He reached into his jacket and produced a folded envelope. "Before I left, I made copies of the invoice irregularities I'd seen. I kept them because something felt wrong, and I didn't know what else to do." He slid the envelope across the table. Ethan picked it up, but didn't open it yet. "There's something else," Frank said. He looked briefly at Maya, then back at Ethan. "Some of the money that moved through those accounts didn't disappear into Logan's pocket directly. It was invested, quietly, in small businesses, spread out enough to look organic." He paused. "One of those businesses is a loan company operating out of East Nashville." Maya felt something shift in her chest. "It's called Ridgeline Capital," Frank said. "Small operation, mostly personal loans and small business financing." Maya set her coffee down. "My brother," she said. Both men looked at her. "My brother Ryan took a loan from Ridgeline Capital 2 months ago," she said. Her voice was steady, but her mind was moving fast. "He's opening a garage. He looked at 3 or 4 lenders and picked them because their terms were the best." She looked at Ethan. "He has no idea." The table was quiet for a moment. "He's not in trouble," Ethan said carefully. "If he borrowed legitimately and is repaying it, he's a customer, nothing more. But the money he borrowed came from funds that shouldn't exist, yes, but that's not on him." Ethan held her gaze. "Ryan is not part of this." Maya nodded. She heard him. But knowing something logically and feeling it settle are 2 different things, and right now her chest was tight in a way it hadn't been since this whole thing started. Frank left 30 minutes later, after Ethan had asked every question he had. They stayed at the table after he was gone. "I should call Ryan," Maya said. "Not yet," Ethan said.
If you warn him and he reacts, it could signal to Logan that the investigation is closer than it is. Right now, Logan doesn't know what we know." She understood. She didn't like it, but she understood. "This became something different the moment Frank said Ridgeline," she said. "I know. My brother works 70 hours a week. He saved for years to get to this point. He can't lose that garage over something he had nothing to do with." "He won't," Ethan said. "I'll make sure of it." She looked at him carefully. "Why?" "Because he's your brother, and none of this is his fault." He said it simply, without performance. "And because I don't operate that way." She believed him. That surprised her slightly, how readily she believed him. They walked along the waterfront afterward, because neither of them wanted to get straight back in the car. The breeze off the harbor was cool and smelled like salt and distance. They walked without agenda, close enough that their arms occasionally brushed. "Do you have family?" she asked. "A sister. She lives in Portland. We talk when we can." He paused. "She doesn't know most of what I do." "Is that your choice or hers?" "Mine. I thought I was protecting her." He was quiet for a moment. "I think mostly I just got used to keeping things separate." "You keep everything separate," Maya said. "Your work, your people, yourself." She glanced at him. "It must be exhausting." He didn't answer right away. They walked a few more steps. "It is," he said quietly. The water moved beside them. Somewhere behind them, the city carried on. Maya thought about Ryan, about Ridgeline Capital, about how a wrong text sent on a tired Friday night had pulled her this deep into someone else's world. She didn't regret it. That surprised her too. They were back in Nashville by day 15. Maya had returned to the diner for 2 shifts, mostly to feel normal again. She moved through the familiar routine of coffee refills and order slips and Deb's running commentary on everything happening in the parking lot, and she tried to act like the last 2 weeks hadn't completely rearranged something inside her. It hadn't worked. She kept thinking about LPC in the margins of Tyler's notes, about Frank Deller's voice when he said, "I believed him," about Ethan standing in that Manhattan lobby with his hand in his jacket pocket, absolutely still, absorbing something that must have felt like the floor dropping out. She was clearing table 4 on her second shift back when her phone buzzed. The message was from Ethan. 3 words. Claire found Tyler. They met at Ethan's Nashville office that evening. It wasn't what Maya had imagined. No mahogany and dim lighting, no obvious displays of anything. Just a clean, functional floor in a building downtown, conference tables, whiteboards, people working quietly. The kind of place that looked like it took itself seriously without needing to announce it. Claire Bennett was already there when Maya arrived. The journalist was younger than Maya expected, early 30s, sharp eyes behind wire-framed glasses, the kind of person who took notes on paper even when everyone else had gone digital. She had a small recorder on the table that she turned face down when Ethan walked in, and she didn't apologize for it. "I've been following the financial trail since I noticed your visits to the diner," Claire said to Ethan directly. "I wasn't looking for Tyler Reed specifically. I was looking for the story behind the numbers." She opened a folder. "I found him in a small town outside Knoxville. He's been staying in a rented room under a different name. He agreed to talk to me after I told him what I'd found independently." "Where is he now?" Ethan asked. "Safe. He'll come in when he's ready." Claire looked at them both. "He asked me to share what he told me first, so you'd understand the full picture before you met him." She laid out 3 printed pages on the conference table.
Tyler Reed had not disappeared out of guilt or complicity. He'd disappeared out of fear and something else, a belief held for months that Ethan Brooks himself was behind the financial manipulation. The silence in the room was complete. "He started noticing the irregularities about 20 months ago," Claire said. "He flagged them internally and was told by Logan Pierce that Mr. Brooks had approved the structures for strategic reasons." She kept her voice neutral, journalistic. "He accepted that at first. Then the amounts grew and the explanations stopped making sense, and he began documenting everything privately." "The storage unit," Maya said. "Yes. He built the case over 8 months, but the deeper he went, the more the evidence seemed to point upward. Every transaction he traced was authorized through channels that ran directly to the top of the organization." Claire paused. "He concluded that either Ethan was responsible, or someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to make it look that way." Ethan had not moved from his chair. "He ran," Claire continued, "because he believed if he surfaced the evidence while still employed, it would be buried, or he would be. He planned to take everything to a financial crimes attorney once he was certain." She looked at Ethan carefully. "It wasn't until I showed him what I found, the Ridgeline Capital connection, the holding companies, the invoice trails, that he understood the activity had been hidden from you too." "He thought I was the thief," Ethan said. "Yes." Another silence. Maya watched Ethan process it. There was no visible anger, just a particular kind of tiredness that comes from understanding how comprehensively something had been designed to mislead. "The scheme was built to look like it came from the top," Maya said slowly. "If Tyler reported it, it pointed at Ethan. If it was investigated externally, it pointed at Ethan. Logan didn't just steal the money. He built an escape route using Ethan's own name." Claire nodded. "That's consistent with what Tyler told me." "The final piece," Ethan said quietly. "You said Tyler has it." Claire reached into the folder again and produced a single printed sheet. "A series of transactions from 14 months ago. Large movements, all authorized using Logan Pierce's executive credentials, but structured so that the authorization trail looped back through Ethan's accounts." She laid it on the table. "On its own, it proves nothing. But combined with the storage unit records, Frank Deller's invoices, the Marco testimony from New York, and the Ridgeline Capital connection. Everything interlocks," Maya said. "Every single piece." Claire confirmed. No one item is enough. Together they leave no other explanation. Ethan picked up the page and read it slowly. Maya watched him and thought about what it meant to spend 14 months inside a problem this large, thinking you were looking outward, not knowing the whole time the answer was sitting across the table at every meeting, every dinner, every decision made together over 12 years. He never intended you to find out, Maya said to Ethan. Logan built it to run indefinitely underneath everything you'd built together, small enough to stay invisible, large enough to matter. He built himself a second life using mine, Ethan said. Nobody answered that, because there was nothing useful to add. Ethan set the page down and looked at Claire. Tell Tyler Reed I'd like to meet him. Not to settle anything, just to talk. He paused. He did the right thing. It just took longer than it should have because someone made sure it would. Claire nodded and picked up her recorder without turning it back on. Maya looked at the pages spread across the table. Every piece in the right place now. The full picture assembled from a wrong text, a forgotten notebook, a nervous man eating pie at table 6 who had no one to say the hard thing to, except a waitress who happened to be paying attention.
Chicago was gray and cold for late May. The kind of cold that comes off Lake Michigan and finds its way through whatever you're wearing regardless. Maya stood at the window of the hotel conference suite on the 32nd floor and watched the city move below her, all traffic and steel and the flat, dark line of the lake in the distance. Ethan had arranged the gathering carefully. He'd framed it as a quarterly business review. Senior figures from across his various companies flown in for 2 days of meetings and dinners. Nothing unusual about it on the surface. He ran these gatherings twice a year. Everyone who mattered to the organization had been in this room before. Logan Pierce had arrived the previous evening. Maya had seen him once, briefly, in the hotel lobby. She'd recognized him from Marco's description immediately. Big, unhurried. The kind of physical confidence that came from years of walking into rooms and being known. He'd greeted Ethan with a handshake that became a brief embrace, the easy familiarity of people who had shared a long road together. She'd turned away before she did something she'd regret. The meeting began at 9. 12 people around a long oval table. Ethan at the head, calm and precise, working through the agenda, item by item. The way Maya had come to understand was simply how he operated. No preamble, no wasted motion. Logan sat 3 seats to Ethan's left. He had a leather folder open in front of him and a coffee he kept adding to from the carafe in the center of the table. He contributed to discussions with the practiced ease of someone who had been doing this for over a decade. Nothing about him suggested he was anything except what he appeared to be. Maya sat to one side, introduced simply as a consultant assisting with a financial review. Nobody questioned it. An hour into the meeting, Ethan shifted the agenda. I want to walk through something with the group, he said. He nodded to one of his team members, who brought up a financial timeline on the screen at the end of the room. We've identified a pattern of movement across several account structures over the past 14 months. I'd like everyone's eyes on it. The room leaned in. Ethan walked through it methodically. Account structures, transfer dates, invoice irregularities. He presented it without accusation, without drama, the way you'd present a problem that needed solving. He asked questions. He invited responses. One by one, the figures on the screen eliminated possibilities. This structure was managed by this division. That division's accounts were clean. These transfers originated here. That person had no access to authorize them. Here's the credential trail. Here's where it leads. The room got quieter as it went on. Logan refilled his coffee at the 20-minute mark. His hand was completely steady. At the 30-minute mark, the timeline reached its conclusion. Every other possibility had been accounted for. Every other name had been walked past. The credential trail sat on the screen, clear and documented, and it pointed in one direction. Ethan looked up from the presentation for the first time. He looked at Logan. The room understood then.
Maya watched it move through them, the quiet recalibration of people processing something they hadn't expected and weren't sure how to hold. Logan set his coffee down. For a long moment, he said nothing. He looked at the screen, then at the table in front of him, then at Ethan. His expression didn't collapse. It settled. Like something he'd been carrying at an angle for a long time had finally been set down flat. "How long have you known?" he asked. "Enough," Ethan said. Logan nodded slowly. He closed the leather folder in front of him. "Then I won't insult you by explaining the numbers." "I'd like you to explain something else," Ethan said. His voice was even, not cold, not hot, just there. "Why?" The room was absolutely still. Logan looked at his hands for a moment.
When he looked up, something in his face was different. The performance had dropped away, and underneath it was just a man sitting with a thing he'd done. "It started small," he said. 12 years ago, we were building everything from nothing. I was working 18-hour days. I believed in what we were doing." He paused. "Then it started working, really working. And I watched everything grow, and I kept doing the same job for the same arrangement, while the value of what I'd helped build became—" He searched for the word. "Enormous." "You felt underpaid," Ethan said. "I felt invisible." Logan said it without self-pity, just as a fact. "It was supposed to be temporary. I told myself I'd take enough to balance what I thought I was owed and stop." He exhaled. "I didn't stop." "No," Ethan said. "You built a company with it." "Yes. And spent years designing it to look like it came from me if anyone looked too closely." Logan was quiet. "That's the part I keep coming back to," Ethan said. "The money I can survive, but you built something that would have destroyed my name if it ever surfaced. You used 12 years of trust to construct a way out that left me holding it." Logan didn't argue. He had no argument that would land, and he seemed to know it. "I convinced myself you'd never find it," he said finally. "And then when I thought someone was getting close, I told myself it still wouldn't reach you." He looked at Ethan directly. "I was wrong about a lot of things." The meeting ended without ceremony. Legal arrangements had been prepared in advance. Logan left with 2 of Ethan's people and a lawyer who had been waiting in an adjacent room. The remaining 11 people sat in silence for a moment. Then Ethan closed his folder, thanked everyone for their time, and walked to the window where Maya was standing. He looked out at Chicago for a while without speaking. "Okay?" she asked quietly. "No," he said honestly. "But I will be." Nashville in late June felt like coming home, not just for Maya, for everything. The investigation wrapped in the weeks following Chicago through a series of legal agreements, asset recoveries, and quiet settlements that Ethan's lawyers handled with the same precision he brought to everything. Logan Pierce didn't fight it. He returned what could be returned, signed what needed signing, and stepped away from a life he'd built on borrowed foundations. Tyler Reed resurfaced fully once it was over. He met with Ethan in a Nashville conference room on a Tuesday morning, just the 2 of them for the first hour. Maya didn't ask what was said, but Tyler left that meeting with his professional record intact and a reference letter that would open doors he'd assumed were permanently closed. He'd spent 20 months terrified of a man who turned out to be the one person he should have spoken to first. Claire published her story on a Thursday. It ran in a national business publication under the headline, "The Architecture of Trust," and it was the kind of piece that people forwarded to each other for weeks afterward. She didn't name every detail. She was careful with what she included and what she left alone. But the core of it, how a carefully constructed financial deception had been dismantled by a combination of a misrouted text message, a forgotten notebook, and a waitress who paid attention, was all there. Maya read it twice at the diner counter before her shift started and felt something strange and quiet move through her. Ryan opened the garage on a Saturday. He'd spent 3 weeks doing most of the finishing work himself,
the way he did everything, methodical, unhurried, proud of the details. Maya had helped him paint the front wall the previous weekend, both of them covered in a shade of blue Ryan had agonized over for a month. She hadn't told him everything about Ridgeline Capital. She'd told him enough, that the lender had connections to a financial investigation and that the loan had been transferred to a clean institution as part of the legal resolution, with identical terms and no disruption to his repayment schedule. Ryan had stood in his half-painted garage and stared at her for a long moment. "You did that?" he said. "Someone helped," she said. He'd hugged her for a long time without saying anything else, which was the most Ryan thing he could have done. The garage opening was small and warm and exactly right. Their mother came. Deb came and brought her husband and ate 3 of the sandwiches Maya had made. A few of Ryan's friends from the old neighborhood showed up with a cooler. By noon, the forecourt was full, and Ryan was standing in the middle of it with the expression of someone who couldn't believe they were actually here. Maya stood at the edge of it and thought about how close it had come to not happening. Ethan had offered her a management position 3 weeks after Chicago, one of his legitimate companies, a hospitality group with several properties across Tennessee. Good salary, real responsibility, the kind of opportunity that didn't come along often. He'd presented it practically the way he presented most things, laying out the details without pressure. She'd thought about it for 4 days. Then she'd called him and told him no. He'd been quiet on the other end of the line for a moment. "Can I ask why?" "Because I've wanted my own place since I was 22, she said. "And I've been waiting for the right time for 8 years. I'm done waiting." Another pause. Then, "What do you need?" She'd told him. He'd listened without interrupting, which she'd come to understand was one of his better qualities. The reward he provided, framed as compensation for her role in the investigation, handled through proper legal channels, was enough to cover the lease, the equipment, the first 6 months of operating costs, and a small cushion beyond that. She found the space in East Nashville. Corner location, good light, a kitchen that needed work but had good bones. She spent 5 weeks turning it into something that felt like hers. She called it Sundays, not for any complicated reason, just because Sunday mornings were when she'd always loved diners most. The slowness of them, the way people came in without agendas and stayed longer than they meant to. The grand opening was on a Saturday morning in late September. The line was out the door by 8 o'clock, which made Maya's hands shake slightly when she saw it from the kitchen. Deb was front of house, moving between tables with the ease of someone who had been doing this for 20 years, which she had. Ryan had built the counter himself and refused to accept payment for it. The morning moved fast and warm and full. Around 10:30, when the first rush had settled into the comfortable middle hum of a busy Saturday, the door opened and Ethan walked in. He was alone. No drivers, no team, no leather folder under his arm, just a dark jacket over a simple shirt and the particular way he had of moving through a room like he wasn't trying to own it. He looked around at Sundays, the warm light, the full tables, the handwritten menu board Maya had spent an entire evening getting right, and something in his expression did what it rarely did. It opened. Maya came around from behind the counter. "You came," she said. "You invited me." "I invite a lot of people. Most of them show up because they feel obligated." He looked at her steadily. "I'm not here out of obligation." She held his gaze. "I know." She led him to the corner table by the window, the best one, the one with the morning light coming in at an angle that made everything look the way things should look. She brought him coffee without asking. He wrapped both hands around the mug the same way he had at her kitchen table on that first night, and he looked at her across the small table in the diner she had built, and Maya thought about a wrong text sent on a tired Friday night and smiled. "What?" he asked. "Nothing," she said. "Just glad you're here." Outside, Nashville carried on. Inside Sundays, something that had started as a mistake kept quietly becoming something else entirely.